Being a marketer's no sweat. You just have to manage dozens of channels, launch hundreds of campaigns, score thousands of leads, and okay, fine, it's a lot of sweat. Unless you have HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools to help you do all that and more. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Social Media Derby. We've got a very special episode this week. We've got a special guest, you'll see the third head popping up. Chelsea fan, first one that we've had on the podcast as well, so well done Ed. But before we get into that and all the pleasantries, considering Chelsea played both Arsenal and United back to back, for those of you watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, drop your comments down below, share the video with anyone that you think might be interested. And for those listening on Spotify, Apple, or any of the audio-only platforms, please follow, give us a 5-star review. All that stuff helps with the algorithms and getting the podcast out to more and more people, so it's much appreciated. But yeah, let's get into the pod then. Obviously, the big game. We've got a special guest for the occasion. Ed, how you doing, bro? You all right?
Yeah, all good. Pleasure to be here, putting the record straight for you guys, giving you a bit of counter perspective. So yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, Ed was requesting vehemently to be on this pod, obviously, because I think we had quite a bit of banter about Chelsea last week. And yeah, none of our teams managed to beat you. And yeah, you're ahead of all of us in the table. So you're here to set us straight. But yeah, Johns, how are you doing as well, bro? You all right?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Disappointed with the result, obviously, but I've been very disappointed with our results recently anyway, so it's just par for the course.
Yeah, I was going to say this is becoming a regular occurrence for you on the pod now. We thought you were past all of this business, but Arsenal were back struggling top 4 race maybe. We'll get into that in a bit. But let's get into the big game of the week. Arsenal versus Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, 1-1. I found it a really interesting game to watch, obviously, as someone who wasn't with any allegiance in the game. Ed, you were at the stadium and watching it live. So we'll go to you first. What did you make of the game, first of all? And do you think either team deserved more than a draw?
Yeah, I was at the game. In the build-up to the game, we were quite confident, of recent form against Arsenal. We felt like this was the time we could go out and put pressure on them and get a win. They've had a hard run of fixtures coming into the game. Not been great away in the league, so we thought we could really push them. The feeling in the stadium was we were probably slightly the better team, but it was a very close game overall. Sat in the shed end, about 10 yards from where Malo Gusto had that header in the first half. Oh my God, I don't know how he missed it. It looked harder to miss than to score. But overall, really good, entertaining game. Both sets of fans, the Ashburton Army were loud for about 10 minutes after they scored, and Chelsea fans were good. There's a good feeling around Stamford Bridge, so it was a great game. It really was a good game.
Yeah, no, I from watching it, obviously we all watched it in different places. I watched that from my sofa at home here in London. John's watched it in Beijing. You were in the stadium. I've watched some content creation from both Arsenal and Chelsea fans, and it's pretty split, like the game actually. I think a lot of Arsenal fans thought that they slightly edged it, or it was a worthy draw, and I feel like a lot of Chelsea fans have said the same on their side. I think the stats bore out 50-50, I think almost equal for possession, and Chelsea had a few more shots. But to memory, I know a lot of them were offside, but it felt like Arsenal had the bigger chances that they missed. But it seemed like a really polarizing game. So, Johns, what did you make of it, first of all? Do you agree with Ed, or do you think you guys edged it?
I think that we edged it just on big chances, but it's kind of like it's like boxing, where you watch a fight, and depending on how you're scoring it or looking at the fight, you might kind of swing one round to one or the other, and at the end of it, if it comes out to a draw, I don't think anyone can really argue. Or if it comes out to a Chelsea win or an Arsenal win, again, I don't think anyone can really say they dominated the game. And I think, generally speaking, it was a really even game between the two of us, which pains me to say, but Chelsea played decently well, and we, again, were just creatively shocking.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so I guess I'm the deciding vote then, since you both kind of said you feel like you edged it each. I I don't know. Maybe I'm being swayed by the big chances, but I felt like Chelsea looked more dangerous. But like, if you take away that Gusto header, I can't really remember too much else that kind of. I know, was it Madueke that hit the bar early on, or I can't remember. So I feel like someone hit Fafana. I think hit the bar early, didn't he? So like, apart from those little chances, I can't really remember. And then I feel like the Arsenal big chances were all ruled offside. So I don't know. I actually think I think a fair result is a draw. I don't know if anyone edged it. I feel like you probably just would feel like that watching it from your own perspective. So I think that's one way you'd probably come out with a draw, and you're not too angry. Well, Ed, that's a good question. Were you upset with the draw? Like in terms of your like aspirations for the season, when the whistle blew, were you like upset with that 1-1 draw? Did you hope for more, or were you quite satisfied with the result?
Um, it was hard to be upset with the last kick of the game was Trossard taking that assist away from Kai Havertz. That was seeing that at the last kick of the game was enough to make us happy with the draw. I think. Yeah, I think the draw was a fair result. I think Arsenal had a lot of the bigger chances towards the end of the game after they scored. So coming away from the game, you kind of felt like a draw was a good result in that perspective. In terms of aspirations for the season, yeah, it keeps us in third. But it's very tight up there. There's a lot to do. A draw keeps us there, but there's a lot of big games to come. What is it? 4 points from
Yeah.
third to wherever United are. Where are you guys? Sorry.
Wherever United are, God.
Yeah.
Oh,
There's only 4
absolutely in the
points,
mud.
right?
It's true though. It is only 4 points after the United result and your draw. I was looking at the table and I was like, this is mad, because Tottenham obviously lost at home to Ipswich as well, and the results just went really funky. Obviously, Forest lost at home to Newcastle, so it's kind of like the results kind of went to just condense the whole middle part of the table, and Tottenham are 3 points off top four. We're still 4 points off, I think, or 5 points off. So it's mad actually when you think about it. From City, it's only City and Liverpool really that are comfy in top four, and yeah, and it's
Yeah.
probably that's, I don't know, John. That's a question to you guys now. Do you think a draw has completely wrecked your title hopes, or do you think you're still in it and there's enough time?
I mean, mathematically we're still in it, but I mean, like I said last week, the more we drop points, the further and further away we get. And I mean, we drop points, and Liverpool still again pick up 3 points, right? And City seem to be in the mud, but it looks like Liverpool are going to be really the team to beat for this year. So I'm going to be honest with you. I think the title race is over for us at least. I think City can always go on a run of like 20 odd games unbeaten or whatever else. It's going to be much harder for them to do that without Rodri this year. So even they look a bit sticky. So I really think it's Liverpool's to lose. And I think for Arsenal, man, I would just be happy if we get bloody second at this point, because we're looking very shoddy, like creatively and clinically we are poor, and we have to be good at one of those two things. Like last year we weren't always clinical, the year before we weren't always clinical, although Saka and Martinelli like definitely did their bit there. But this season we're neither clinical nor creative, right? Like you mentioned Trossard, he's probably our most clinical player. Last year, if that was him on the ball, he's probably scoring it, right? He's coming on late and scoring it. And this year, he's not even being clinical, and he's our most clinical player. And then obviously you've got Havertz, who does Havertz things, and he's not going to be the most clinical player. Martinelli's not very clinical recently either. So if we can't do anything creatively and we're not clinical to finish our chances, I don't think we deserve to win the title.
I agree, man. There's definitely something going on, and I understand you've had injuries. I mean, like Ed will remember last season for Chelsea. I remember last season for United, where we had so many injuries and it was an absolute nightmare. So it can definitely derail your season. But it definitely does feel like, we talked about it a bit last week, Arteta's definitely reverted to like moving, like he's testing things out too much, moving players out of position too much. And this was probably the first time in like a month and a half, maybe, or a month, where I felt like people were playing in their actual positions. And even then, I would argue Timber at left back is still not his best position. So like you haven't got the ideal setup in terms of the players in their positions, but you saw the difference. I mean, in my opinion, I think Neto was the best player on the pitch in this game. But on the Arsenal side, Odegaard was probably the player that was. Even though I still think Chelsea did a pretty good job on both Odegaard, and then you guys did a good job on Palmer in terms of stopping the creation, but a few chances for each of them. I still think Odegaard was probably your best player. Like, he was still the one who was going to create something. Obviously, your goal came from that. I know the defending on the Chelsea side was really poor. I wanted to get your opinion, Ed, on that in the stadium, because it looked like, I don't know what happened. Colwell played them onside, and then like on the back post, the right back and the centre back just go walkies, and you've got Martinelli and I think Trossard as well, or someone else, completely unmarked at the back post. But it was a really nice little ball from Odegaard, and I don't think you would have seen that if you still had him out and you had someone else playing in that 10, because I think it's just been too many moving players around for you guys, and it feels like it's probably already derailed your title hopes as it is, and now you're going to have to go on a run kind of similar to the one that you had at the turn of the year last year to even get anywhere close, I think. Which is going to be hard going, because you've still got Anfield to go to. You've got Chelsea obviously now back at Emirates. You've got City at Emirates. You've got still a lot of big games that you've got to go and take 3 points in to even give yourself a chance. And like Ed said at the beginning, your away form I think you were one of the best teams away. Before this little spell of defeats and draws. And suddenly your away form has just completely fallen off a cliff as well. But Ed, quickly on this one, because obviously you're on the same points as Arsenal. And they're still. I know Jonty's kind of said maybe the title charge is over, but some Arsenal fans are still thinking it's on. Do you think you're in this title race, or are you firmly like top four is all we're looking for?
Not a chance. Liverpool for me go on and win the league quite comfortably if it stays as it is. City forgot how to play City football. Arsenal, if Arsenal are in the title race, Chelsea are too, and Chelsea aren't in the title race this year. We've got no false pretensions that we'll be there. Top four is a big ask for us still, and if we can make top four under Maresca in his first season and go on with a strong run, we should win it. The Europa Conference League, those are a good season for Chelsea with Maresca for the first time.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I think. So we were talking about our last week's podcast. I still think Chelsea attacking, you've just got so many options, man. João Felix didn't even touch a pitch, did he? I can't remember if he came on in subs, but you've just got so many. Nkunku came on for the last few minutes. Obviously, I've had to do a my bad on Nico Jackson, because even in this game, I felt like he was much improved from last season. And you've just got Mudryk, I'm still not sure about, but anyway, most of your attackers, you've got a lot of firepower, and like for example Neto in this game, I thought he was the best player on the pitch, like I said. So you've got a lot of firepower going forward. But I will say in this game I was super worried about your defence, but I actually think as a whole you did pretty decently defensively. Bar obviously Colwell playing Martinelli and whoever that else was at the back post onside. I feel like your defence did all right. Like, do you also agree that your defence is probably the only thing stopping you from being a properly good side?
I think overall this season defensively we've been fairly solid. We conceded one more goal than Arsenal this season, and everyone talks about how defensively strong they are. We lost Thiago Silva in the summer, went back to Brazil. And on the surface, that looked like it was going to be a hard task to kind of fill his gap. But Wesley Fofana, I thought was really good in the game on Sunday. He was. Carried the ball out of defence a couple of times, really strong. Cucurella, it's not that he had Saka in his pocket, but he definitely limited the chances that Saka created. He was strong against Saka on the one-on-one.
He had 4 man on him.
Yeah, but a lot of times when he was still left exposed against Saka, he was
He
there,
did
and
well though.
Saka didn't have much enjoyment in that game. But
Sound like
I
Gary
think
Neville gave him bloody man
kind
of
of
the match, didn't he?
yeah, I mean, if you watching the game back, he had a really good performance. I think Saka was your biggest threat, and to keep him quiet was a big performance from him. So, but I think the goal, Levi Colwell drops when he didn't need to, or the rest of the team didn't drop with him. But Malo Gusto, as good as he is going forward, there's still a few questions coming back into a back four shape from kind of being inverted. Leaves that space, as you saw, the two players on the back post. But regardless of that, the goalkeeper is the biggest, weakest link in Chelsea's defensive line, and he should be saving that goal every day of the week. Near post, it wasn't. He hit it kind of side foot. It wasn't with loads of power. He should be saving that, keeping a clean sheet, and beating Arsenal 1-0. Yeah, defensively we're good. Cole Palmer came into the game carrying injury. There were doubts whether he would even start, and it was a quiet game from his standards. Pedro Neto looked good, but he looked much better when he went over onto the right. Madueke came off, and he had some joy on that side. He, attacking for Chelsea is really where to get Chelsea fans excited. We've got so many options there. People are willing to run at defenders, and make life difficult for fullbacks in the league.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. You'll notice I didn't mention a certain ex-United attacker that you have, because he's probably the only one that doesn't do what you just said, running at defenders and attacking. Like he'll pass backwards and sideways and stuff like that. And he's but what's happened to him, by the way? Is he sick or something, or has he gone to the mountains again?
I don't know. Yeah, he obviously got 2 assists in his first 2 starts for Chelsea. Looked like he'd shaken the burdens of Eric Ten Hag off of him, which I think a lot of players have seen the same thing for United, right? So, but yeah, I don't know. He hasn't featured even in the kind of Mickey Mouse Conference League games. He hasn't had any minutes. So there was talk about him being ill or something, but maybe there's something going on behind the scenes. Maybe not. There's a lot of players to get ahead of in that team.
Yeah, you've got a big squad, to be fair. And that attacking, I mean, like I said earlier, if João Felix is struggling to get in, that player will struggle as well. So it makes a lot of sense. It's interesting, John, because I don't. Obviously, Ed's gonna say that, and he's watching it live in the stadiums and stuff. So maybe there's a different perspective. But I think in this game, Chelsea's defense was much better. I agree. Sanchez, he's such an interesting goalie, man, because he does like things like that where he should definitely save it. Like you would expect the top level Premier League goalie to save it, not even like a big six keeper to save that on your near post. But then he makes like a big save from Martinelli early midway through the first half. He had a couple of other moments where he made little saves where you're reminded why he's playing at a top team. But yeah, he's a really interesting goalie. I mean, there's a lot of similarities between him and Onana, to be honest, with their bozo-ness that makes fans kind of just confused by them. But what do you make of Chelsea's defence? Because I know Ed rolled out the one more goal than Arsenal stat to support his argument, but I think Chelsea's defence has definitely been what's held them back from being, maybe even closer to City and Liverpool and being properly in the race. But what do you make of the defensive argument?
No, I think their defence is what holds them back. And I mean, comparing it to Arsenal, who have had bloody 3 red cards and had to play with bare man down all the time. And then the fact that we're having an absolute stinker this season defensively. And that's what you want to compare yourself with? I think you need to aim higher than that. But yeah, I think it will be their kind of Achilles heel, because especially if Lavia, if he can't stay fit, because I know he came off with a kind of like a slight injury as well. Because I think Caicedo and him cover up a lot of deficiencies even more in the defence, right? And allow Cucurella and Gusto to go forward when more than a normal right back, left back kind of pairing would be able to do. So I think if you see any dips in form in your central midfield as well, or if you have to see Enzo come back, I think your defence will look even worse. But my big thing is that you've got so many defenders, and a lot of them are like prospects, or they were prospects before coming to Chelsea and had been good for their previous teams. So I can't believe that like none of them will come good. I just kind of feel like it could have been a good idea to try and keep someone like Thiago Silva in the team to kind of coach some of these guys and get them maybe playing with a bit more confidence, or playing with like lending some of his experience, because it's an inexperienced kind of central partnership as well. Like if you think of Colwell's not exactly very experienced, Fofana's obviously not massively experienced, coming back from big injuries all the time. Adebayo, like Tosin, all of these players, they're all relatively young and or like don't have a lot of experience for big teams. So you combine that with what I think is a very timid goalkeeper in Sanchez, because I think Sanchez has really got like all the tools to be an amazing goalkeeper, because he's bloody massive. He's relatively mobile for a guy of that size. He's not shockingly bad with his feet. And I think if he just had a mentality change to him, he could end up being like I think a top 3 goalkeeper in this league. But it just seems like mentally his attitude is like he's not strong enough. And you kind of compare him to Onana. I kind of feel like Onana's got the personality maybe to be a leading goalkeeper because of the fact that he's really coming out and trying to command his team. But that like Sanchez doesn't. Like kind of seems like he's just going to let people maybe boss him around. And that's the part. Maybe as like a non-Chelsea fan, I don't pay that much attention. But every single time I kind of see him, he always kind of looks a bit timid and doesn't really feel confident in himself. And I feel like the goalkeeping position is definitely a high confidence position. So, yeah, I feel like their defence and their goalkeeper will be their Achilles heel. And it will be highlighted if you don't see Caicedo and Lavia continue to start and kind of protect them even further.
Yeah, I agree, man. But a couple of questions for you, Ed, because we've been on the pod for a couple of weeks. You know, when we obviously United played Chelsea the week before, and Arsenal obviously played them this week. So we've been talking about Chelsea a lot more than we normally do on the pod. And we've been raving about the Lavia and Caicedo partnership, and basically lauding Maresca's decision to bring Lavia in and drop Enzo. What do you make of it? Because I thought, again, Caicedo low-key may have also been one of your best players as well. He was doing a lot of good work in midfield. Are you happy with that midfield pairing, first of all? And generally, are you quite happy with what the starters look like under Maresca this season?
Yeah, I think we definitely look strongest when we've got Caicedo and Lavia there together in the middle, and Gusto comes in from defence. Caicedo goes around kind of bullying other players, avoiding bookings sometimes, which is great to see. Puts tackles in all over the pitch. He was great on Sunday as well. Dropping Enzo. There's been that stat that went around on Sky Sports about Chelsea win percentage without Enzo and with Enzo. But listen, I still think Enzo's got a lot to offer on a pitch. Obviously, he's a very talented player. But right now, where we're at, that defensive surety with those two in there is a lot more valuable for the team. Lavia looks great on the ball. Yeah, can he stay fit for a whole season? He really looks like a wizard sometimes. What he can do on the pitch, getting out of tight spaces, turning on the ball.
He's got an engine as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, he keeps going. Yeah, it's a shame he had this big injury that we signed him with the injury, and it took him a while to actually get into a Chelsea shirt. I think we saw him for like 2 sub appearances last season or something like that. So to have him back is massive for us. There's a bit of a midfield problem, but there's a bit of a problem all over the pitch. And I think Maresca's doing a good job of saying to the players, look, if you want to get into this side, you need to prove what you can do. No one's position really, maybe Cole Palmer, but no one's position is guaranteed. Go out there and make your point about it. What was your other question, Ant? Sorry?
It was just on Maresca, because I'll be honest with you, it was quite hard. Obviously, most of us are not watching a lot of the Championship last season, right? And Leicester Leicester was probably. I don't know the bookie stats, but I think they were probably favourites to go right back up of all the relegated teams the season before. So he was kind of expected to come up. He came up. There were some Leicester fans that were kind of moaning about it and saying they almost bottled it at the end. So there was a little bit of unknown with Maresca. Are you quite happy with what you've seen so far, and do you think he's your guy long term?
Yeah, oh yeah, we're ecstatic with what we've seen so far. There's a good feeling, as I said earlier, around Stamford Bridge now, which we haven't had for a couple of years. Even under Pochettino at the end, there was always that, you know, is he going to go on and win things with Chelsea, and the Spurs connection? So Maresca coming in, he's kind of silenced a lot of the noise around the big squad. He's put his ring around his team, allowed big players to go off and train with the reserves or the youth, and in earmarked who's going to play for him week in, week out. I think it helps having the Conference League in the week, playing big teams from Armenia and stuff to come over and have a nice training game midweek. Allows a lot of the lads to kind of get a run around. But I think there'll be problems later in the season as to how he manages it. Excuse me. Players like Nkunku are not going to sit on the bench for the whole season. They're going to want to be involved. Same with João Felix. Looked annoyed that he didn't get on yesterday. So I think there's real good feelings about Maresca. He looks tactically like he knows what he wants to do, and the players buy into it. But I think there will be some problems later on this season as to how he manages the minutes of some of the so-called big names in the side, who probably deserve to get more minutes than they have been at the minute.
Yeah, but I think your point about the Conference League minus the Armenia thing with Noah's Ark FC and all those guys that you're battering 8-0, you're going to be in that realistically probably till near the end, surely, right? Like you said earlier, the aspirations to win it. I haven't seen anyone in that competition that look like they've got half the squad that you have. So I would expect you guys to go deep. So maybe, like you said, that will keep the rotation guys happy for the best part of the season, especially if Maresca actually keeps it like a cup team for that cup competition and the Premier League team. You see some managers when they get near to the end of quarterfinals and on in the cup, they start playing their full strength squad, and then the guys that got them there kind of get shunned. So I guess if he keeps that going, then maybe Felix and Nkunku will be satisfied enough. But yeah, looking and thinking about it, deeper, I think you're right. I think Felix and Nkunku and a few of those guys that are probably too big to just play in the Conference League are going to start kicking off later on in the season. But you never know. You might be hit with suspensions and injuries like Arsenal are getting now later on in the season, and that's hopefully when your squad will really tell. Because I was looking at the squads yesterday, and I was thinking, damn, actually, I mean, it shouldn't be like a surprise because of the money that you spent, but low key, you guys have built, like, everyone's been mocking you for a while. Like people are mocking us right now about kind of wasting the money, but actually, you haven't really, like I said, the attack, you've got a lot of good players in there. I don't think you've really wasted that much, bar probably Mudryk is probably the one where you go, oh, that was a bit dodge. But the rest of them all seem like money well spent, really. And obviously Enzo, and I mean, Caicedo's coming good now, and Enzo's still got that price tag to shake off. But you've got a really good squad. So, yeah, maybe some of us who are predicting you to still being like properly mudded were a bit naive to do that now, because it looks like a lot of those players are coming good. John, so I wanted to ask you quickly about Arteta. This will be a quick one, and it might piss you off straight away. But the Maresca question, I'm going to flip that to you. How are you feeling under Arteta? Are you tempted to get an Arteta out shirt, or how are you guys feeling at the moment?
I'm definitely not Arteta out or anywhere near it, and anybody that is either a clickbaiting YouTuber that just wants to get views, or is absolutely mental. I honestly, I think it's somewhat to be expected from us. Like I know last season and the season before, like, not we got lucky, but we definitely did suffer less than other teams when it came to injuries, when it came to like disciplinary problems, etc. So overall, we can't outrun it forever, right? We're eventually going to get injuries to important players. We're eventually apparently going to get targeted by the PGMOL. Things are going to happen that are going to make it more difficult for us. And I think from my point of view, like, I was expecting at the beginning of the season, naively, that we'd be able to just keep it going and raise the level even more. And if you think about it, like, even Liverpool, after a couple of years really trying to fight against City, couldn't sustain it, right? Like, they obviously did get over the line at certain points, but like overall, they couldn't necessarily sustain it in the league, and they end up having like down years where they've got to rebuild certain things, certain players leave, etc., right? And my big worry is that just we're going to lose key players before we've actually won anything. And that's where I've been worried, right? Like, really, we had to win something last season or even the season before to really keep people around. So from my point of view, I'm not worried about Arteta really, but I am worried about the squad and kind of what will happen at the end of the season if we end up coming third or whatever else, right? God forbid we come fourth or something else. So I'm not upset with him necessarily. I do think that there's things that he could have done better, but at the end of the day, like, he's not perfect. Even Pep makes mistakes. A lot of City fans have been pissed off at Pep previously about like tinkering too much, doing all kinds of craziness with putting his centre backs at DM and, you know, going for essentially no established striker, all of these things that he did previously that kind of made the level seem to have dropped. I would, you know, say that Arteta's done similar things this season and even some crazy things last season. More so than anything really, though, is just behaviour in the transfer window. And I was going to say before we got on, I think this is a great example of a team that wasn't very good last season, had a good transfer window, and is now a much better team this season. And a team that was good last season have a poor transfer window and look quite a lot worse this season. And that's what's going to worry me the most. So, you know, Edu obviously leaving. There's been rumours about how much, you know, effect Arteta has on transfers and all this other stuff. I am going to look at the next couple of windows, and that will actually have some sort of sway on how I view Arteta. Because if we've gone, you know, if we go in January and don't go and try and get like a backup winger or something else to try and really push us on, or next summer, if we again go and do like Marino, Sterling-esque signings, and we're not going to go and try and get a marquee striker or a marquee left winger, I am going to look again at like, you know, Arteta, even, you know, depending if it's Rosicky or whoever else is the sporting director. The commonality among all of the, you know, these last windows will be Arteta. And there is obviously a lot of rumours that he's got a lot of sway at the club and basically gets to decide. And he pushed very heavily for players like Marino and Sterling, particularly Sterling with his previous relationship and so on. So if that is the truth, and then we end up having another stinker in January and another stinker next season, I'm not saying I'm going to be Arteta out, of course not, but I am going to think that a change needs to happen in the team and that he needs to be trusted a bit less. Because obviously if we have two stinkers in a row or three stinkers in a row in terms of windows, I'm going to think his player ID is maybe not as good as it should be. So I'm not Arteta out, and you won't hear those words out of my mouth unless we have like a Man United-esque season or something like that. But I am judging him. He's not untouchable, if that makes sense.
John,
I'm going to get you. Go on, Ed.
You can always come over to Chelsea if you're stuck in the transfer window. We can see what we can dig out. Your Marcus Bettinelli can come over to you guys and do a job or something. There's always that option for you guys, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, Chelsea keep that in terms of selling. We mock Chelsea's buying, but Chelsea's selling has been top tier because you've basically just sent all your viruses out to other clubs. You chucked Mount for us for 60 million or whatever it was. Who, to be fair, I don't think he's a virus. I think he's a decent player, but he's obviously cursed with injury. So you flogged like an injured horse to us for 60 million, which is not bad. And then you keep giving your scraps to Arsenal, and a few of them. I mean, Havertz. Maybe we've got different opinions on it, but I think that transfers look better now than it did at the time. Jorginho, I think, has turned out to be a pretty handy player for them. But yeah, the Sterling one is the one where, I don't know, man. You guys were a bit stinky last season and Sterling was there. Arsenal were looking a bit stinkier this season and he's there.
So how is it possible that, right, like, you're paying 50% of his wages and it still seems like you've come out of that deal better? Like, how bad is this guy?
Yeah, I think it's a bit more than that, right? I feel like we're paying 75 or you're paying 25 or something. It's a crazy deal, but he was stinking out for Chelsea, like, you know, actually detrimental to the team going forward from goal with a clear pass and shooting and missing, blazing free kicks into Rosed of the upper tier and stuff like that. So he was poor for Chelsea. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the Sterling deal suits both parties though, because we didn't want to see him play for us. We had better players for the position, and he's obviously on big wages. So to even if we'd only cover 25% of his wages, that's over the course of the season, a few £1 million or £5 million, whatever it is. And he's not going to make Arsenal any better. I haven't watched him for 2 years, so we can rest easy on that. I just want to touch on Kai Havertz for Arsenal. That one, he's not the forward, not the number 9 for Arsenal to go and win the league. He flipping plays left back for the national team, so he's not the one to do that. So there's a bit of animosity towards Kai Havertz we touched on before the pod started, but for some reason he thinks he's this big guy at Arsenal and shushing the crowd when he scores an offside goal. But he's not the one for you guys to go on and win the league.
Yeah, that was. I mean, we've got a couple of celebration police things to touch on. That's a good point, Ed. I actually forgot to bring that up. We've got one in the United game as well to talk about. But yeah, Johns, what the hell was going on with that? Like, I was unawares of some sort of beef between Chelsea and Havertz. So were you quite surprised when he started shushing the crowd, or did you kind of expect him to give a bit of S-housery?
You expect it for the first couple of times that they play each other, and I think he did do it in the first couple of times that we played each other after the transfer. So I think that was warranted, because let's be honest, a lot of Chelsea fans were mocking the life out of him after he left and kind of basically saying good riddance, and we've got way more money for you than we should have, and so on. And I think obviously the way that you talked about him when he played for your club was mixed as well. You weren't all in on him. So for a player who I've heard apparently is a mad confidence player, he maybe takes that to heart, and then he's kind of got a grudge against you guys as a result. I just think he's not taking it too far. I just think that you guys care less than he does now, which is weird. Usually it's the other way around, and fans hold on to it for longer than the player does. But it almost feels like he's holding on to it for longer than you lot are, and as a result, kind of making himself look a bit not silly, but just if you're gonna do it, make sure you actually scored. Doing it off of an offside goal kind of adds to the whole donkey, the whole he's a bit of an oaf type of aura that he's kind of built or cultivated for himself, right? Is that he's a bit of a kind of big, lazy, kind of clumsy-esque player, and then you go and see him bloody shush an offside goal, and it kind of adds to the bozo-ish aura of him. So overall, I'm happy. I'll be honest with you, I'm happy with the transfer. I don't think we got a better deal, and I don't think we got a worse deal. I kind of feel for that money in this day and age, he's probably kind of on par with that value. Especially if you look at players like Darwin Núñez and Antony and whoever else have been spent even more on. I think he's doing a decent job for us. But I do think that Arsenal fans have gone a little heavy on him, and kind of tried to make out the Declan Rice thing, where we should give you more money for him, which is I think is mad. I think he needs to do way more. He needs to score way more goals to get anywhere near us being so happy with that transfer as if we got one over on you.
Yeah, I think be careful what you wish for. He scored the biggest goal probably in his career for Chelsea, won the biggest trophy there is, and he goes on as if he was booed every week when he played in a Chelsea shirt, which wasn't the case. He was a bit of a cult hero. He had his own song at Stamford Bridge. Maybe he reads too much Twitter, because certainly from match-going supporters, he was quite a well-loved player.
It's a weird one. I just didn't when that when people move between clubs and you kind of expect there to be a bit of vim when they come up against their old club. You kind of know it, right? You can kind of feel it and understand it most of the time. But this one, like John says, it's a weird one. It kind of almost feels like Havertz has held on to this, or created a bit of this, kind of a bigger issue out of it, than maybe there is. There definitely was a lot of Chelsea fans mocking him when he left, but I feel like that just died down pretty quickly after the transfer had finished, right? I didn't see too many Chelsea fans continuing that narrative on and on and on and on and continually sticking it to him. And even last season when you guys played, I don't remember him being booed or anything like that, and by Chelsea fans at all. So it's just a weird one. It's just he's just probably maybe there's part of him that's more angry at the club for like letting him go as well. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what went on in the background of that transfer. Maybe there's some dodgy stuff that happened. But yeah, it was a weird one. I'll tell you what though, if he'd have tucked away that last minute chance though, the Chelsea fans would have absolutely lost their mind.
Yeah.
To lose it on the last minute to Havertz, at home that would be tough. But anyway, let's move on from the Chelsea Arsenal game. We've done a solid 39 minutes on it, so I think we've covered it from all angles. And let's cover a rare United win. So 3-0 at home to Leicester. I'm going to get your opinion, Ed, on United. But before we do, I realised I didn't actually ask you about Arteta and the Arsenal side. Do you feel like Arsenal fans should be more critical on him, or do you feel like they should go down Jonty's route and be more supportive and give him more time?
I think they've got to give him more support and more time. More time seems crazy, right? Because he's taken Arsenal from a side that were like on the peripherals of Champions League to like having 2 consecutive title charges. But yeah, shock that players get injured and form dip. That's what kind of happens. Yeah, I think Arteta's solid in this position. There can't be any talk about Arteta out. That's crazy talk.
I think that's fans with agendas, isn't it?
I think that's a certain YouTube channel that thrives off of clickbait content, isn't it? Right? There's no genuine thought amongst the supporter base that should be the right tactic. I think the biggest thing, transfer system going forwards, Edu out, can they strengthen the team and make the right decisions in the transfer market to push on and be stronger again next year? But if they're not stronger than they were last season, albeit for injuries or whatever else, then there will be questions asked somewhere along the club. But no, Arteta is the man for Arsenal for the future, or for the short future, let's say. He needs to win a trophy though. He needs to win something.
Yeah, no, I agree. But no, I agree completely. I don't even know if certain fan channels are really shouting for Arteta out, but there are obviously people that I think weren't sold on Arteta at the beginning that have had to like kind of pipe down when things have gone well. That when things go slightly dodgy, are going to obviously start piping up again now, aren't they? And say that they're right all along. But I think you've got to keep. He's still doing a good job, right? Arsenal's still in the top 4 right now, and the expectation is that they push on again and get back up with Liverpool and City, and that's not out of the question completely. They've got big games against all those guys to take points off them, and they can totally do it. That run at the turn of the year showed that they can do it. So I think people need to just try and calm down a little bit on this run, because it's 2 defeats and 2 draws. It could be worse. It could be City, 4 defeats in a row. And most of the City fans that I've seen online and stuff seem pretty chill about the situation. So I think Arsenal should follow suit, to be honest. All right, but now let's properly get into the United-Leicester game. Man United won 3-0 at home. I think we've beaten Leicester twice in 2 weeks or something, or less than 2 weeks, in the Carabao Cup and now the league. It was Ruud van Nistelrooy's final game in charge. The news broke yesterday that he's officially left the club as well, so he won't be staying on as part of Amorim's backroom staff. But in terms of the game, I'll be honest, guys, I did watch it. I didn't choose to watch the Forest Newcastle game, which, by the way, Sky, what a stinker. How could you not put Ruud's final game in charge live to watch Forest against Newcastle? God, we've said it before on the pod. Sky love Newcastle. The amount of times I have to watch Newcastle on TV is just absolutely, it's abnormal to watch this much Newcastle on TV. They're just like they basically play rugby, and they're not any of the most entertaining teams in the league, but suddenly we've got to watch them all the time. But yeah, I did find a way to watch United Leicester. And it was a decent game, to be fair. Well, at least the first half was in my mind. But I'll get your opinions on it, guys. Bruno, Ahmad were probably our 2 best players, to be perfectly honest. They combined for the first goal, really nice finish. And then I know Bruno was saying the FPL, players that have got him in his team are going to be begging for him to get the second goal. But yeah, that's definitely an own goal. Actually, he's lucky that Christensen was there, because otherwise he was going to miss that from like 7 yards out with an open goal. But yeah, 2-0 at half time. Second half, we should barely bother talking about it. It was kind of drab, not much going on except for Garnacho's curled winner at third goal near the end. So yeah, we won 3-0, pretty comfy in my mind. But yeah, I'll get your guys' opinions on the game and Van Nistelrooy. That decision anyway for Van Nistelrooy to leave. I'll start with you, Ed. What did you see the game, or did you watch more highlight? What did you think of the game?
Yeah, I've just seen highlights of the game. Yeah, like you said, Sky went for a top four clash over a relegation battle, so you can kind of see their logic there. But
Newcastle in the mud with us, mate. Come on.
No, yeah, I'm joking, obviously, but no, I just saw the highlights. Yeah, Bruno Fernandes does what he probably should have done more times this season, right? You know, he's a big player for you guys and needs to stand up when the team's not performing well to carry you to results. So that's kind of what he did. I think the players were from my perspective, the players weren't playing for Ten Hag. You know, was it Dalot that missed that blatant open goal to get Erik Ten Hag sacked? Like, there's a better bounce from you guys since Erik Ten Hag's left. But do you really think Amorim's the man to get you back up in the top four? That kind of remains to be seen.
I mean, I have my opinion on that. I mean, I'll John, quickly, but before we get into the Amorim bit, what did you make of the game? Did you watch it?
I did, because in China I can actually watch all of the games, and I can do it with English commentary as well. So I have that, Sky. But no, it was for the scoreline. It wasn't that entertaining of a match to watch. I'm going to be honest with you. I think Leicester were not great, and not seeing Vardy start, I was kind of doomed. I didn't think they had really any chance to do anything against you lot. But yeah, no, I think Bruno had a better game than he has had this season. I think it just shows when the quality of opposition is low, he looks good. When the quality of opposition is maybe a bit higher and you're playing against somebody a bit better, he stinks. So it remains to be seen whether I think he's actually at a higher level or really in form or not. But overall, I think, yeah, it was a pretty comfortable game for you guys. I'm gonna call out Jack Hermanson though, because my God, against us, you were literally prime Petr Cech, and against Man United, you were absolutely poor. The first and the third goal, I know Antony's not going to say this, right? But if that was any other goalkeeper, Antony would be getting on his goalkeeper bloody soapbox and saying that they should be getting a hand on that or doing something with that. And he got nowhere near either of them. And again, I know it's harsh on him because he's basically going to be a relegated goalkeeper, a lot like old Ramsdale. But honestly, he should be doing better than that on both of those, I think. I'm not saying he should say both of them, but he needs to get a hand on one of them at least. So I'm going to just call that out, because against us, again, he literally put out like a 10 out of 10 performance and got man of the match. And against you lot, he's just doing charity and giving you 3 goals. Stinks.
That's the only reason why you're bringing that up, because he was top class against you guys. I don't think... I mean, the best keepers, your Alissons, I mean, maybe Emi Martinez, something like that. Like, they would maybe save that. The pure shot stoppy type goalies, right? They would maybe save that. The first one, definitely, I think. Even though he's a bit like, I saw the angle from behind, he's a bit like blindsided by one of the defenders, but still, you would expect him to get a hand onto it, because I don't think he touches that at all. The Garnacho one, I don't know. Like, I haven't seen it again to know exactly where it landed in the net. But I feel like you're being a bit harsh.
It was nowhere near the side netting.
But yeah, I think it's mainly because he pulled off an absolute worldie against you guys, and it took you until like the 90th minute to score that. You're being harsh on him. But I thought this game was not high in quality. But I will also say, when we played Chelsea last week, and we did say it on last week's pod, that game also was not high quality. So I think it's just fair to say we are not high quality right now. So you can't expect us to put in high quality performances. And I kind of agree with the wider point. If you play a poor team, I mean, that's what the game's going to be like. I would argue that, Bruno and Ahmad's performance, I feel like, was probably the only ones in the team. And Ugarte was decent as well for once. in our team, they were probably the only three players that put in a good performance. Casemiro was okay as well. But I agree. The wider point that Ed made earlier, it's very obvious, and it pretty much always is obvious after a team sacks a manager that you start to see which players weren't playing for him, and then you can judge whether or not the kind of the change room kicked out the manager. And I think it was very obvious that the players weren't playing for Ten Hag anymore. I would argue probably stopped playing for him post FA Cup last season. I remember there were leaks coming out saying that the players were quite shocked that he was still in the job after we did that, internal review or whatever it is. So it was quite obvious, I think, that they had decided, or they have come to the conclusion that he wasn't the man, pretty much from the start of this season. So I'm glad that we pulled the trigger and we've got rid of him. And yeah, to answer Ed's earlier question, is Amorim going to be the guy to get us to top four? I'll be honest with you, man, and this is going to sound crazy considering how low we are in the table and how mudded we are, but we haven't had a massive problem with getting in the top four. Like, we've generally always, we've been in the top four, then maybe we'll miss out one season, but then we'll get right back into it. And we've kind of taken, turns at going in the top four, even finishing third and second and stuff like that. So I'm not even going to measure him based on top four. My measurement is top four is a given in the first couple of seasons. Like, I'm not going to say like Ten Hag, like maybe it will take him 2 seasons and that's totally fine. But that's not what I'm judging him on. Like, he needs to put us into title contention. By the time he's, I would say at the end of that extended, because he's got a 2.5-year contract, but the option for a third. By the time he's in that, done the third season, we should be either firmly solidified in third or whatever in the top four, if not looking like we're really gonna contend for the title. Otherwise, it's not been a success, because I can't lower the bar. Ten Hag even managed to get top four. We're not even talking about the trophies that you always talked about. He managed to get top four. Mourinho managed to get top four. Oli managed to get it seasons back to back. I think even Van Gaal managed to get top four. So I can't, all of these managers are being seen as not ultimately being a success or being a failure because they're not still there. So I'm going to judge Amorim by higher standards of just top four. We're definitely going big on the whole Calafiori angle with him and the aura and stuff like that. I'm seeing all these like bloody Vogue photo shoot shots of Amorim laughing and shaking the dinner lady's hand and all this kind of stuff. And we're definitely going big on the old PR for him. But yeah, let's see how he works out. Let's get into the Van Nistelrooy question then. I'll ask you, Ed, first. Do you think it's a mistake not keeping him on the as one of Amorim's backroom staff, or do you think it's the right decision to kick him, Rene Hack, and a bunch of Ten Hag staff to the curb?
He's bringing over a lot of his backroom staff, right? And he's bringing over his own assistant manager. Is the same assistant manager?
It's more than that. Yeah. He's bringing 5 or 6 guys from Sporting.
Like, he's not going to bring. What's Van Nistelrooy going to do? He's going to want to be assistant manager. He's not going to go collect the cones at training, is he? So he's not really going to. Amorim can't just give him that position. I think he's got to come in with his own mantra and his own staff and his clear way of playing football. I don't think it makes sense really to have Van Nistelrooy in there. And I don't think Van Nistelrooy really needs to either. He needs to go off and perfect his own trade. Can he get a managerial position of his own and show what he's about? Because he's looked good under the 2 games for United. But I don't think it really makes sense for him to just slot back in as assistant manager. You need to have a new clean slate and start afresh.
Yeah, I think the argument going around is people not really knowing whether he was Ten Hag's preferred assistant coach or whether like Ineos brought him in, because obviously Ten Hag had his guys at the end of last season who left, and it was kind of unclear as to whether Van Nistelrooy was his choice or he was kind of brought in. There's obviously all of that conspiracy that he was brought in to be like take over when Ten Hag got sacked and do the interim job until the end of the season, and that's why Ineos brought him in. So it's a bit of a sticky one. What do you think, Jonts? Do you think it's right? Do you agree with Ed to kick him out, or do you think he should have been kept on?
I think it makes sense to get rid of him. I think a lot of managers tend to like obviously bringing in their own people. And particularly, I mean, a lot of the people that Ten Hag ended up getting were all Dutch guys. So I'm assuming there's a language thing to it, there's a culture thing to it that you kind of want to keep between your staff. I think if you look at most managers in the league today, like Arteta's got a lot of Spaniards in his staff. I think Pep's got the same. I think you're probably going to end up seeing a lot of managers do that same thing. So it makes sense for Amorim to bring in his Portuguese guys that he's worked with, can speak more comfortably with, and kind of talk about tactics with. And I think, honestly, keeping Van Nistelrooy around, I don't think it's any fault of his own, but it's kind of like a backup plan, in my opinion. And I think having that backup plan, there's always the chance if Amorim's not going not doing so well for the team, or he's taking a while to bed in, there's going to be, impatient Man United fans saying, "Oh, just get Ruud back in because he's just done so well." You know what I mean? Like, that is not, I think, what you want to get off on the right start or on the right foot as Man United manager. I think you kind of need to get rid of all of the parachutes, get rid of all of the backup plans, and just say, okay, this is what we're going to go full in on. And I think by keeping around Ruud, you might have actually created, even more of a media circus than already exists around Man United, which is one of the things that he's going to have to deal with. And he already had it from bloody Gary Cottrell or whatever, bloody forcing him to try and speak English. Like, he's going to have to deal with that issue, that media issue, more so than probably any other manager in the league. And that's going to be tough. So he doesn't need to have like another thing added onto that of Ruud van Nistelrooy in the background, kind of adding more questions and putting more kind of fuel onto the fire. So I think it makes sense to get rid of him. And I agree with Ed. I think Van Nistelrooy needs to be a manager. Like, he's managed PSV. He's won titles, or a title. He should go and try and get another job somewhere else. I mean, he could go and bloody manage West Ham if he wants, because it looks like Lopetegui's absolutely useless. So I think he's good enough to go and get one of those other jobs. He could go and get a championship job and kind of do a Maresca, Kieran McKenna type of thing and try and get them up and see if that leads to something in the league. Who knows? But I think he's too good to be an assistant manager anyway, or I think he's too ambitious maybe to be an assistant manager.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. I was it's quite frustrating because there's obviously quite a lot of ex-United players in our media, and they've all been kind of like, they've not quite done the Rio thing where they've got the contract on the table and say sign here on the dotted line for Ollie, for example, but they've started the media narrative around Van Nistelrooy, right, in these 4 games. Oh, he looks the part, he's saying the right things, it's the most authority we've seen for a while, all digs at Ten Hag, which is fair enough. But also kind of just creating this buzz around it to try and almost build up a bit of media buzz around him as a manager to I don't know, help him get another job in England afterwards, or to, who knows, maybe keep him on the staff. I saw a lot of, I think Rio and Gary Neville were talking about trying to keep him there as part of Amorim's backroom staff to have some sort of, he knows the club, etc., all of that kind of rubbish. But I totally disagree with that, and I agree with you guys. You've got to give the new manager that feeling that he's, trusted, and give him the security of bringing in all of his backroom staff to give him the best chance possible to succeed. And I feel like you're getting into dodgy territory when you start dictating to a manager. Well, he's not even a manager, is he? He's a head coach, right? We've gone down the modern route of head coach, I think he is. To give them the people around them. If you start saying, no, I'm going to bring in an assistant coach to work with you, and like you said, John, they don't have a cultural fit, or there's no synergy because there's like a language barrier, or they've got different ideas about football, then you're in big trouble, man. You're going to start seeing like what happened, which is why I believe Van Nistelrooy wasn't a Ten Hag choice. You saw that in the technical area, right? A couple of times before Ten Hag was being sacked, they were having a go back and forth, or they didn't seem to like have a great relationship in terms of like between the two as a coach. So you want to give Amorim the best chance, and yeah, but that's before we even get into the media stuff, because yeah, he'll obviously get media scrutiny and he'll get all that comes with being a United manager as well. So I'm glad that Ineos have made that decision, or Amorim, or whoever's come up with that decision to let Van Nistelrooy leave and just have a clean break. And now we got to see how it goes. He's obviously got these 2 weeks now in the international break to try and get to know the environment, and the staff and the other people that work at the club, and spend some time with the players who are either injured or not at international duty, which it looks like from the England squad anyway. This international break is going to be like you're going to be calling up all these players without caps because a lot of players are pulling out, and I know Cole Palmer's not playing. I think Saka's pulled out, Rice has pulled out. You've got a lot of the big players pulling out, so yeah, it will be interesting to see how he does. And then we've obviously got Ipswich away. We'll be buzzing after beating Spurs on their own patch, so that will be tough. And it will be Kieran McKenna, who we were obviously linked with heavily in the summer to replace Ten Hag. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one. I'm sure that will probably be like a 12:30 kickoff on TNT Sports or something. So they've got all the TV cameras in Amorim's face as soon as he steps onto that pitch. But let's get into that's enough on United. It wasn't a big enough game to keep going much longer. Let's go on to the last segment of the pod then for this week, and we'll do a special segment on Amorim and his predicted 11. So the way we've done this is we're expecting, right, guys? I'm going to confirm this with you now. He's going to play his 3-4-3 formation, right? Like from what I've heard him say as well, he said he's going to go with what he knows. So we can only assume he's going to do a 3-4-3. So we'll say who we think from this United squad is gonna fit into those positions. So obviously got goalkeeper, left centre back, right centre back, left wing, two centre mids, a left wing, or did I say that already? Right wing, either way. Two cams, and then a centre forward. So we'll start with the goalie because this one should be nice and easy. Who do you reckon is going to be? I'll start with you, Ed. Who do you reckon is going to be the goalie under Amorim? Are you going to go for Bayindir or Tom Heaton? What are you saying?
I think that's quite an easy one, right? So yeah, Anana's going to sit in there for you guys. That's a fairly easy question. Should get some good form under Amorim potentially. Hasn't performed as well as he probably could have done for United.
He's been decent this season, though, I will say, and I'm an Onana skeptic. I don't love him as a goalie. We mentioned him earlier in the Sanchez Bozo goalie section earlier in the pod. He's definitely in there. So question marks, but yeah, he should be the goalie, right? Johns, this is an easy one. We've all gone Onana, surely, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's go left centre back then. I'll start with you this time, Johns. Who do you think is going to slot in at left centre back?
I think it's got to be Lissandro. Left footer makes sense. Gets a bit more width to the kind of the three centre backs, and I think you need a slightly taller centre back in the middle. So I'm going to go Lissandro on the left.
All right, let's do this. Let's do this as a defensive line because otherwise, I think one by one we'll end up all repeating each other. So who have you got centre back and right centre back then, Johns? You've got Lissandro left. Who's centre back and right centre back?
Okay, so I've got De Ligt in the middle. And then I'm actually thinking that they're going to have to stick Johnny Evans on the right. And I think obviously because he's slow and everything, but he's experienced. And I think in a back three, or a back five, technically, like the speed is going to be less of an issue. I'm assuming they're going to put someone rapid next to him on the right hand side. So I'm going to assume the fact that he's old and slow ain't going to make that much of a difference in a back three. So I'll go Johnny Evans. Maybe you know what? I'll stick Johnny Evans in the middle, and then have De Ligt on the right hand side. Maybe protect him a bit more, and not have him kind of having to deal with people running over the top or something. So, yeah, I'll go Lissandro on the left, Johnny Evans in the middle, and then De Ligt on the right hand side.
All right, what about you, Ed? Are you going to go the same? Are you bringing back Johnny Evans?
Yeah, I don't know really. Have you got 3 high quality centre backs at United, or is that something they need to answer in the recruitment? In general,
I actually think
is Harry Maguire going to be the one to come back in? In a back three, you like Jonty said, the pace of Evans can be covered up a little bit more. Alessandro Martinez needs to be in there. De Ligt's obviously coming for a decent transfer. So those two, and then who's the third is the question. Yeah, do they stick with Evans and use the back three to cover up any pace that he might have lost? Do
you reckon Lindelof has a shout?
I don't know, because the thing is, to answer Ed's earlier thing, I think centre back area is the one area we probably don't need to mess around with too much in recruitment. We've got like 8 centre backs, we've got loads, so we've got more than enough to cover. and I actually feel like the quality issue there is not going to be a massive one because of the position changes, and I think having three centre backs will bring the best out of, or you'll get to see better of Lissandro, De Ligt, and I've gone for Yoro at right centre back because I feel like the left centre back and right centre back need to have a bit more pace to cover the space. Because I actually think the wingers that he's going to play, if he goes for this 4-3-3, 3-4-3, sorry, I sound like Todd Bowley then. You're going to need to have real defensive coverage in the left centre back and right centre back space. So I think.
So we're including players that are injured.
No, he's back in training. He's probably going to play when he come back from the international break. Yeah, Euro's back. They've been doing that whole social media buzz around Euro as well, touching the training ground. So yeah, I'm expecting Euro to come into that space. I do agree, Lindelof is a good shout because he's one of the only other centre backs that we have that have a bit of pace. Because once you get past Euro and Lissandro, and even De Ligt, I could say, has probably got just about enough pace. All the like Evans, Maguire, or they could only pretty much play, I think, in the centre back space because of their lack of pace. And Lindelof is probably the only one that I think can come in. He's not rapid, but he's got more pace than Maguire, and he's more agile than Johnny Evans, who could probably come in. Maybe he's a shout. You've seen him a bit under Ruud, so maybe it's a Lindelof remontada at centre back. Who knows? But yeah, I'm pretty much similar to you guys, but I would definitely put Yoro in the right centre back space because he's back from injury and he's got some pace to cover it. Let's go left wing then. Let's do left wing and right wing. Ed, who do you think is going to play? Because this might be the most controversial one, right? Because we don't necessarily play with traditional wingers. Certainly not in a 3-4-3. But who do you think is going to play left and right wing?
Yeah, I think this is hard to predict really because in this system, I think the wingers need to offer more defensive cover, right, than they would traditionally. So, is Rashford going to cover his opposition winger in out of possession? So I think to judge them going forwards, I think Garnacho has got to be your guy on the one side, and Rashford is probably your man for the other side, but it's coming to that story with Rashford now of is he the man to do it going forward for United? Diallo is another good shout. Obviously scored 2 for you guys in the week, right?
Europa,
yeah, I don't know, to be honest. It's it depends on how much Amorim thinks he can trust them with the defensive responsibility as well, because a lot of the players good going forwards, but do they offer that defensive cover?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and I would argue with some of those players this season they haven't been good going forward either. So yeah, this is probably the position where we're going to get the most variation, I think, in our answers, because so basically you've said Garnacho and
Rashford,
potentially Rashford, right? What do you think, John's left and right wing?
I think he's going to want to put a left footer on the left side because I think he wants width. So I don't think you're going to see people like cutting in necessarily. I don't think you're going to put like a right foot on the left side and a left foot on the right side. So I think, I honestly think if like Shaw comes back, I think he's good to be the kind of left wing back position. I don't think it necessarily has to be a winger. I think he can play enough going up and down. The issue that you've obviously got is that he's just mad injury prone. So I'm not necessarily sure about him. I definitely don't think Ahmad will play on either of the wing back positions. I don't think he's got enough of an engine going backwards and forwards, or like enough physicality, in my opinion, to really shine in that position. I think he's more kind of a shoe-in for one of the 10s maybe. So I'm going to go for Luke Shaw because I think he's coming back now, right? So technically he could maybe get in there. And if it's not him, then I actually reckon that Antony might have a remontada at the left wing back position because he's an engine. He's proven that he's been better defensively for you than he has been attacking. And I think obviously he's Brazilian, so he speaks Portuguese. There might be easier way to communicate between him and Amorim. Obviously, I know Brazilian Portuguese and Portuguese are not exactly the same, but I think they'll be able to communicate enough. So you could see that. And also the fact that you spent so much money on him, you've got to try and get something out of him. and it's clear that he hasn't been favoured under the previous leadership. So maybe Amorim might put a bit more faith in him. So I'm going to go Luke Shaw, and then if he's injured, then I reckon Antony might get a cheeky little shout.
What about right wing then?
I think it's got to be Garnacho. It's got to be Garnacho.
All right, it's interesting then. So you've got a little bit of overlap between yours two. I think you guys are forgetting about Mazraoui and Dalot. And I think Mazraoui will definitely cover one of these positions. I'm not sure if it will be left or right wing, because he's got the engine to cover the space. And you've seen when Ten Hag was losing his mind and playing him at cam, he can also offer some creativity going forward. So I'm going to put Mazraoui at right wing, and then the one thing I am going to agree with you guys on is Garnacho. I think he's going to go on the left wing. So the only thing I will say is watching, and I haven't watched Sporting extensively, like I've admitted over the last couple of weeks, but watching them in the Champions League recently, he doesn't stick to purely like a left footer on the left side and a right footer on the right side. They played that young lad Quenda on the right wing, and he's left-footed. He was cutting in quite a lot against City, and to be honest, he ripped them to shreds. So I think there's some flexibility there to play other, the players who with not a preferred left foot on the left wing and preferred right foot on the right wing. So I'm going to go Garnacho on the left wing. I agree. I think he's got the engine, and I think he'll have the discipline once Amorim's gotten into him to come and track back more. And I think Mazraoui is probably going to be the one I would put on the right wing. I think Dalot needs to ride the bench for a good while because he's been absolutely poor. I don't think Antony should touch the squad, and I think Rashford's positions won't be in the wings in this system. Luke Shaw as well. I don't want to hear Shaw again. Shaw needs to go out the door as soon as we can flog him. We need to get him back fit, playing in the under 23s, keep him safe, wrap him in bubble wrap, and then sell him as soon as we can because it's a disgrace, as Arteta would say. All right, let's go centre mid then. Ed, who you got in centre mids? Let's do them as a pair. Who are your two? This has got to be easier, surely.
Yeah, it's quite easy, right? Kobe Mainoo's injured, right? So it's going to be Casemiro and Ugarte in there. I don't think there's much really need to be said about that. I think Mainoo when he comes back. How long's Mainoo out for? I know he's injured, but
I don't think he'll be back in the first team at the end of the international break, but I think he might be training by then. So he might be. You might have the opportunity to bring him off the bench or something, and he might be in the team before Christmas, I would say. So I think you're right though. I'm going to jump in and put in my centre back pairing before going to John. So I think in the interim it will be Casemiro and Ugarte, and they've looked actually okay under Ruud, especially in the last couple of games, albeit against not the greatest opponents, but they've looked all right. But I do agree. I think not because they're the best fits, because I think Kobe might be better suited to a more attacking role in an Amorim system, but I think because of the options we have for this season, Kobe and Ugarte will be the two. I'm pretty sure once he's back from injury. Well, you're going to agree with that, surely, Johns, right? You're not going to throw Eriksen in or someone else.
Yeah, no, I think Ugarte and Casemiro will start, and then Kobe will come in for one of them. I don't know who it will be necessarily.
Okay, so you're opening the door for maybe Ugarte drop. I need to get you guys' opinion on this. Ugarte, what do you think, Ed? Do you think he'll be a good player? Because I have not been moved by him so far.
Yeah, I know Chelsea were linked with him as well, like back in the summer, but we've kind of linked with a lot of players. But it remains to be seen, really. I can't say that I've seen enough from him to say, he's going to nail on and win you the league under Amorim as you guys hope. So, but there's a player there. He looks solid. He gets about, doesn't he? But it's hard to tell.
Yeah, true. Maybe United fans have been a bit harsh on him. Under that back end of Ten Hag's era, he barely touched a pitch, but when he did, my God, it was not looking good. But yeah, let's give him a chance. Amorim is his coach from Sporting as well. Jonty will remember from that Europa League contest that you had a couple of years ago. But all right, let's get into the cams then. Johns, we'll start with you. Who have you gone for the two cams?
I think one of them has to be Bruno, and you've got too many strikers for Rashford to play up front, and I don't think Amorim's going to have the bollocks to say no to Rashford. So I'm going to stick Rashford on the kind of left 10, and then I'll put Bruno on the right 10.
Interesting. Ed, do you agree with that? Do you think you're going to have to squeeze Rashford in there?
Well, I put Rashford on the left because I think that Bruno Fernandes goes into one of those positions, and the other person on my attacking midfield would be Mason Mount. Played in a similar system to Thomas Tuchel with the kind of two eights or 10s, whatever you want to call them, but two attacking midfielders behind the striker, and Mason Mount in there for Chelsea was great. Won the Champions League, so forth. So
second time you've mentioned that.
Yeah, but no, yeah. I mean, we loved him at Chelsea, and he didn't quite do his business at United yet. But I think that system suits him. He can press high, win the ball high, a lot of energy in there. It kind of sits to his game strength. So, yeah, I'd like to see, us Chelsea fans aren't bitter towards our ex-players, so I'd like to see Mason Mount go in there and do his business.
I think that's a good shout. I've seen people do this and talk about who Amorim could play in the cams, and only a handful of people have mentioned Mason Mount. It's almost like they've completely written him off. I think he's definitely, if he can stay fit, I haven't quite got to the Luke Shaw stage with Mason Mount yet. I haven't given up on him in terms of a player. I think he could definitely feature, and I think Amorim coming in is probably one of the best things that could happen to him, because now he's not competing with Bruno. He'd hopefully be, playing with him. I think he's going to have a battle on his hands though, because the player who hasn't been mentioned in this section yet is who I'm going to go with together with Bruno, because I think Bruno is a shoo-in, and I'm going to go with Amad Diallo in the cam, because he's got pace and stuff to play as a winger, but I think what we've seen from the glimpses so far this season is he's actually got decent link-up play, and he connects quite well with the other players around him. And so I think he'll suit better to actually play more central and not have to do the tough ask of running back and forward on the wings. So yeah, I'm going to go with Amad together with Bruno, but I do think that shout, Ed, for Mason Mount is a decent one, and I wouldn't be shocked to see Amad pulled out and Mason Mount to play alongside Bruno. But I would say what Johnson said is my biggest worry. My biggest worry is that the manager comes in and he has to pander to certain players. And I do think there's a chance that he does come in and Marcus Rashford is almost thrusted on him. And, they basically said, you've got to find a place for him. Because I feel like that kind of happened with Ten Hag. And he had to stick by him throughout. And he wasn't courageous enough to drop Rashford enough when he was playing poorly. And I think this is the perfect opportunity for a new manager to come in. I can't see where Rashford fits in this system. So he's going to have to adapt his play, or he's going to, sink or swim, basically. Let's get into centre forward then. I can't imagine this is going to be difficult from some of the performances I've seen from our new signing this summer. I doubt any of you guys are going to go for him, but I'm going to double check. Ed, who have you got centre forward?
Yeah, so it's not going to be the pace merchant. It's going to be Rasmus Højlund. It's going to be in there. Yeah, for me. Again, question marks over whether he's going to be good enough to win the league of United, because I was thinking about them with a title for top four charge, whereas obviously Antony raised the bar a little bit and said he needs to be judged on winning the league. So is he enough firepower to do that? Don't know, but from what we're suggesting there, from what we're looking at, it's got to be Højlund, right?
Yeah, I think John. Surely you've gone Højlund as well. Don't say you've gone for Xerxes or somewhere else.
No, I think it just makes sense. He's nowhere near Gyökeres level in terms of like being clinical, but I think he fits the same kind of mold. So I think not to say that he's going to completely try and replicate his team, because obviously that absolutely flopped when Ten Hag tried to do it. But I think based off of how good he's been with that sporting team, I think if he sees kind of parallels between Man United players and some of his sporting players, I think he's probably going to try and utilise them. So I think it's got to be Rasmus to start with at least. it'll be interesting to see how he's going to use Xerxes and all these other dons that like Ten Hag bought for his own system, because like this 3-4-3 thing is not that easy to play, and it's your squad is not like attacking wise is not the most versatile. You've got a lot of like out and out wingers, and then a couple of like central players, but it's not as if they can do multiple jobs. So I feel like it's going to be a weird one at the beginning. And I think with Rashford, I think on the last comment I'll make on that is I think he's going to have to give Rashford a chance. But I've already heard things about how he like really prioritizes intensity. So I think if Rashford might do that thing that he always does, where he like tries to impress the new manager enough to stay in the team, and then after a while just drops off a cliff and just decides he doesn't really care anymore. So he might end up doing that this time. He might show some intensity like he has in the last few games, try and track back a bit more and, you know, do all of that stuff. And then you kind of see maybe some of his other strengths shine through. But if he doesn't perform from the get-go, I think Amorim will drop him out and get somebody else in. I just don't think you can have enough confidence in Mount for him to start in Amorim's system. I think he's going to have to play some of the proven players that have already played this season, that have done something. Even though you've been stinky, he's going to have to choose some of the players that have like got a bit more match fitness and sharpness and so on. So I think he's probably going to try and fit them in first and then see how that goes and swap people out as he needs to.
Yeah, I think you're both right, to be honest. I think the attack is probably going to be the area alongside with maybe midfield, but mostly attack is going to be the area where I think Amorim's going to have to like get in the transfer market and do deals. I don't even, when I talk about raising the bar, Ed, before, I'm not saying that Højlund's going to be that guy, by the way. I actually feel like there's a big chance Xerxes gets flogged. If Højlund doesn't raise his levels in this rest of the season, you know, Amorim goes out and looks to buy a striker. That will be his first team striker, and Højlund drops to the bench, right? Like that's totally more, that seems more realistic and feels more feasible than Højlund suddenly turning into, you know, Gyökeres overnight. I don't think that's possible. Even though I think there's, you know, he's going to be used to try and imitate that. You know, it doesn't look like there's been no sign yet that Højlund is close to becoming that striker at the moment. So I think there's going to be a major facelift in the attack. And I think we need it to fit his system. And when you talk about intensity, Johns, yeah, I think that's going to be the key factor. But you could be right. Rashford could do the rope-a-dope and start, you know, running a bit more and giving a bit more under the new manager and do enough to stay in the squad. Who knows? But I do think his best shot is going to be a centre forward.
Well, just think about Rashford in his first season with Ten Hag. He was on absolute fire and by far your best player. And then since then has absolutely dropped off a cliff and barely deserves to start for you anymore. So I'm not saying he's going to do it, but there's a chance that he does the rope-a-dope. Yeah.
I mean, that was also with his contract expiring. So I'm going to have to look up whether his contract's expiring next season or this season to work out when Rashford starts playing better again. But yeah, let's see. Anyway, that's enough for this segment. We'll quickly, before we wrap it up, do an update on the prediction scoreboard. Still not looking good for me. I managed to get 2 right results from last week. Obviously, United winning, and was actually 2 United wins I predicted against Paik or Pauk or whatever they're called, and against Leicester. We got both Arsenal results wrong. We predicted an Arsenal win, I think both of us, against Inter, and it was a loss. And we predicted an Arsenal win against Chelsea, and it was a draw. So we're being too positive on Arsenal, John. So we need to start, you know, bringing our expectations down on Arsenal.
With Inter, I predicted
to
a draw.
Reality.
But yeah, still being too positive, clearly.
Yeah. But anyway, the update is you're on 24, Johnson, I'm on 12. So you're still smashing me up. So I should probably calm her a little bit. But anyway, that's the pod for this week. Cheers, Ed. Thanks for coming on, mate. It was great to have you on. We'll try and do this more regularly when we talk about Chelsea, because otherwise you'll be blowing up our DMs again. to be more even-handed and balanced. We were balanced this week, surely. You're going to accept that, right?
Yeah, you were forced to be a bit of balance in there, right? So. Yeah, but no, good pod, guys. Thanks for having me on. And I'll see you probably in the reverse fixture later on in the year, right?
Yeah, we'll definitely get you on for that. But cheers, Johns, and cheers everyone for tuning in. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, everyone.
podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.